This is what they found beneath the ruins of the world's most infamous ancient city. Archaeologists were digging for clay tablets, but struck something completely unnatural. There is a sealed chamber down there, holding an artifact that proves we weren't the first advanced civilization. Join us, and let's discover what lies under Babylon. Let's go.
Number 12. Babylonian cylinder seal, micro-engraving authentication, light diffraction, fraud prevention. Among the bureaucratic artifacts recovered from Babylon's crucial district, a building functioning simultaneously as legal archive and financial repository, excavators found sets of official cylinder seals used to authenticate property contracts, financial agreements, and legal documents. Standard ancient administrative equipment on first examination. Then someone put one under magnification. The surface of each seal contained a sub-millimeter lattice of engraved lines, microscopic patterning completely invisible to the naked eye, at a thread density requiring tooling of extraordinary precision to produce. More critically, the patterns were cryptographically unique. No two seals were identical, and no seal could be replicated through any casting, stamping, or manual carving method available without the original master tool. Here is the security mechanism. When light struck the seal at one specific angle, and only that angle, the microscopic surface lattice reflected a distinctive signature, a structured pattern of light and shadow that confirmed authenticity and was physically impossible to forge without the original instrument. This is the operating principle of holographic security authentication, the same physics printed on modern credit cards, passports, pharmaceutical packaging, and currency as the primary anti-fraud mechanism. Babylon was using optical diffraction as financial security infrastructure 3,000 years before photography existed, and roughly 3 millennia before holography was officially developed. A civilization that needs cryptographic authentication has a fraud problem serious enough to engineer against, which means it has a financial system sophisticated enough that fraud represents a real institutional threat. That is not primitive. That is a functioning economy with a security department. And outside those walls, they had automated something even more foundational to civilization than finance.
Number 11. Babylon. Advanced technology, lost knowledge, ancient civilization evidence, rewriting history. Here is what the complete body of evidence actually proves. This was not a primitive civilization groping slowly toward knowledge. This was a fully optimized, technically sophisticated urban civilization that had solved, in practical, measurable, engineering terms, problems the modern world spent centuries pretending were new discoveries. Electrochemical metallurgy, optical magnification, acoustic engineering, mathematical trigonometry predating Greece by a millennium, clinical diagnostic medicine, astronomical computation, anti-counterfeiting optics, automated agriculture, precision cartography, industrial ceramic manufacturing at color-controlled scale. Every single one of these technologies deployed not in royal isolation, but in the residential neighborhoods, workshops, and commercial districts of ordinary citizens. The technology wasn't sacred, it wasn't secret, it was normal. A standard feature of daily life in a city that existed before Rome, before Athens, before the conceptual framework of Western civilization had been assembled from any of its parts. And then it was gone. Not gradually superseded, not slowly replaced by better methods. Gone. The knowledge evaporated so completely that for 2,000 years, the entire human species forgot these things were possible, and spent those 2,000 years reinventing them one discovery at a time, naming each rediscovery after a European scientist, writing those names into the textbooks, while the original Babylonian engineers stayed nameless under the sand. The open loop planted at the start of this investigation. Why does the academic world refuse to update the official timeline against physical evidence this overwhelming? Has exactly one answer. Because if Babylon was already this advanced, then human history is not a story of ascent from darkness. It is a story of amnesia, catastrophic, total, repeated. And if it happened once, it can happen again. Look at everything your civilization knows today. Every system, every formula, every engineered solution that keeps 8 billion people alive.
I'm going to ask you a simple question. Are you a naturally curious person? If you're watching, I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. This space is made for people like us. To ensure you're always part of this community and receive all our latest discoveries, you just need to do one thing: subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to stay connected with us. Okay, now that you're part of our Legion of the Curious, let's move on to the next item.
Number 10. Plimpton 322, Babylonian mathematics, Pythagorean triples, 1,000 years before Pythagoras. In 1900, Edgar Banks, an American antiquities dealer working in southern Iraq, sold a small baked clay tablet to Columbia University. Nobody paid serious attention to it for 30 years. Then, in 1945, mathematician Otto Neugebauer cracked what was actually written on it. What he found silenced the room. The tablet, now called Plimpton 322, contains a precise, organized table of what mathematicians call Pythagorean triples, the numerical relationships that define right-angled triangles. The formula most people learn as the Pythagorean theorem is named after Pythagoras, who died around 495 BCE. Plimpton 322 is dated to 1800 BCE. That is 1,300 years before Pythagoras was born. Not a rough approximation, not a lucky coincidence scratched into clay. A systematic, multi-row table of exact integer solutions, some involving numbers in the hundreds of thousands, that required a mathematical framework sophisticated enough that modern researchers are still debating how the Babylonians derived them. In 2017, University of New South Wales mathematician Daniel Mansfield published a paper arguing that Plimpton 322 wasn't an abstract exercise. It was a practical trigonometric table, a working computational tool for land surveying, construction geometry, and astronomical calculation. A trig table, predating Greek mathematics by over a millennium. Think about what that means for every history of science textbook currently in print. None of them are accurate. And what they were calculating with that trigonometry, tracking objects moving across the sky with mechanical precision, gets even darker.
Number 9. Babylon Canal Automatic Sluice Gate Float Valve Feedback Control Mesopotamia Irrigation. Along the network of canals feeding Babylon's agricultural perimeter, excavators documented a series of mechanical installations built directly into the canal walls at regular intervals. Gate mechanisms, complex ones. Each unit contained a sealed buoyancy chamber made from hardwood and bitumen, a pontoon, connected through a bronze pivot arm to a precisely calibrated counterweight stone, which connected through a second arm to a sluice gate controlling water flow into the field channels. The operating logic was self-regulating. Canal level rises, pontoon rises with it. Rising pontoon rotates the pivot arm depresses the counterweight. Counterweight opens the sluice gate, water flows into irrigation channels. Water level drops, system reverses. Gate closes. Zero human action required at any stage of the cycle. This is a closed-loop feedback control system, the foundational engineering principle behind every automatic regulation device ever built, from a toilet float valve to a nuclear reactor's pressure management system. The first documented closed-loop control system in Western engineering history is James Watt's centrifugal governor, built in 1788 to regulate steam engine speed. The Babylon irrigation gates predate that by over 2,000 years, and these were not isolated experiments. Multiple identical installations, consistent design, citywide deployment. The agricultural output this enabled, automated round-the-clock irrigation requiring zero human labor, fed 200,000 people in a desert, and freed massive amounts of human time for science, manufacturing, and trade. It created the economic surplus that made every other technology in this excavation financially possible. And somewhere in that surplus, someone produced a document that should be physically impossible to exist.
Number 7. Babylonian sexagesimal system, base 60, mathematics, origin, time measurement, angles. Right now, there are 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle. You use those numbers every single day. You set alarms by them. You navigate by them. Every building on the planet is constructed using geometry derived from them. You have probably never once thought to ask where they came from. They came from Babylon. The base 60 numerical system, called sexagesimal, was developed by Babylonian mathematicians no later than 2000 BCE, and the reason we still use it 4,000 years later has nothing to do with tradition. It has everything to do with the fact that 60 is the smallest number simultaneously divisible by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, and 30. That property makes base 60 dramatically more computationally efficient than base 10 for fractions, angles, and cyclical time measurement. The Babylonians didn't stumble onto this. They chose it after demonstrable mathematical analysis of numerical bases. Their astronomical tablets show they were calculating the length of the solar year to 4 decimal places around 700 BCE, accurate to within 0.001% of the modern measured value. They tracked the synodic periods of Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn with observational records spanning centuries. They predicted lunar eclipses using the Saros cycle, 18 years and 11 days, a mathematical interval that modern astronomers still use today. The official story credits Greek and Roman civilization with building the foundation of modern science, but the Greeks learned their mathematics from Babylon. We inherited it from Rome. The entire mathematical infrastructure of the modern world traces back to a desert civilization that textbooks call pre-scientific. What they built to physically defend that civilization was constructed on an equally impossible scale.
Number 6. Babylon Archaeological Excavations Iraq Out-of-Place Artifacts Official Timeline. Here's the question nobody in academia wants to answer. If these people were primitive, if they barely understood mathematics, physics, and engineering, then explain the battery. Explain the optical lens sitting in the British Museum right now, dated to 700 BCE, ground to optical quality precision. Explain the gear mechanism that calculated planetary orbits before Greece had a written alphabet. Explain why every single object pulled from beneath this ancient city functions exactly as it was designed, and why the textbooks still pretend none of it exists. The city is Babylon. The excavations started in 1899, led by German archaeologist Robert Koldewey, cutting through 30 feet of Iraqi desert sand. What he and the teams that followed uncovered didn't fit the approved story of human progress, so the approved story simply didn't change. That's not a conspiracy. That is institutional inertia with 100 years of momentum behind it. The official version of human history is clean and comfortable. Stone tools, then bronze, then iron, then electricity. Every step earned, every invention arriving in the correct order at the correct time. That version requires ancient people to have been fundamentally limited, smart enough to survive, not smart enough to engineer. Babylon destroys that version completely. Because what came out of the ground wasn't primitive refuse, it was functional systems, technologies, engineered solutions operating in ordinary residential buildings, in middle-class homes, in the workshops of regular tradespeople. And the first object that broke the entire timeline weighed less than a pound and fits in the palm of your hand.
Number 5. Babylon Bronze Gears Ancient Calculating Device, Mesopotamia, Antikythera Mechanism. The world already knows the Antikythera mechanism, pulled from a Greek shipwreck in 1901, dated to approximately 100 BCE, a shoebox-sized assembly of interlocking bronze gears that calculated lunar and solar eclipses with extraordinary precision. Scientists spent decades treating it as a singular anomaly, an accident of genius that appeared once and vanished. That narrative just took a direct hit. Among the debris of Babylon's artisan quarter, excavators found a cluster of interlocking bronze discs, corroded, fragmentary, but undeniably geared. Teeth meshed against teeth, axles aligned to axles, proportions consistent with a device designed to track repetitive cyclical motion. Reconstruction of the surviving gear ratios produced something that stopped the analysis cold. The proportions don't correspond to decorative geometry. They correspond to the orbital period of Jupiter, accurate to a degree of precision that demands deliberate mathematical calculation, not approximation. Think about what that requires. To encode Jupiter's orbital period into a gear ratio, you need long-term systematic astronomical observation, years of recorded data. You need the mathematical framework to extract a precise numerical period from that data. And you need the mechanical engineering capability to translate that number into a specific gear tooth count. That is a complete scientific methodology, not a lucky guess, not a ritual artifact. A scientific instrument built by engineers who had already solved observational astronomy, abstract mathematics, and precision manufacturing simultaneously, 1,000 years before Greece officially invented any of those fields. But the most unsettling discovery in Babylon wasn't mechanical. It was built from physics you cannot see or touch.
Number 4. Ancient Silver Antimicrobial Cookware Mesopotamia Oligodynamic Effect, Iraq. The kitchen of the same merchant's house. A set of copper cooking vessels, well-used, heat-stained, clearly functional. Nothing unusual until the laboratory results returned. The interior surfaces of every pot were coated with a thin, perfectly uniform layer of pure silver. Not silver alloy, not decorative inlay. Elemental silver, applied with technical consistency across the full cooking surface. The academic reflex is to read this as wealth display, affluent families demonstrating status through precious metal decoration. That reflex collapses the moment you apply basic microbiology. Silver ions destroy bacteria, fungi, and a broad spectrum of pathogens through a mechanism now called the oligodynamic effect. Modern hospitals deploy silver-impregnated surfaces in operating theaters, catheter linings, and wound dressings for exactly this documented reason. A silver-coated cooking vessel extends food safety, dramatically reduces bacterial colonization, and protects the household from foodborne illness in ways that are clinically measurable. The Babylonian cook wasn't making a status statement. They were applying antimicrobial protection to their food supply using empirical knowledge of silver's biological properties that Western science didn't formally describe until the 1890s. In a dense urban environment of hundreds of thousands of people, contaminated food and water sources kill faster than armies. Babylon apparently understood that and engineered the solution into everyday kitchen equipment. The depth of applied intelligence embedded in ordinary domestic life in this city was extraordinary. And then you look at what they built above ground, and the sheer scale of it makes every household discovery look like a detail in a much larger, much darker picture.
Number 3. Ishtar Gate, Babylon. Lapis lazuli glaze, kiln temperature technology, ancient. The Ishtar Gate was the northern entrance to Babylon, constructed under Nebuchadnezzar II around 575 BCE. It now stands partially reconstructed in the Pergamon Museum in Berlin, and it stops every visitor immediately. The surface is covered in thousands of individual glazed bricks, deep cobalt blue and turquoise, studded with relief figures of dragons and aurochs in bright yellow and white. Vivid, saturated, perfectly sharp after 2,500 years. The official explanation for the color is lapis lazuli-derived pigment fired into the glaze. That is technically accurate and completely incomplete, because producing that specific cobalt blue glaze requires firing temperatures held between 950 and 1050 degrees Celsius, maintained within a precise range for a precise duration. Too cool and the glass matrix doesn't form correctly. Too hot and the cobalt compound oxidizes to an entirely different color. Modern industrial ceramics use computer-controlled kiln systems to hit these tolerances. Babylon hit them repeatedly, consistently at industrial scale. Thousands of bricks, uniform color, zero significant variation across an entire monumental gate structure. The temperature control required is not guesswork or experienced approximation. It demands a measurement system capable of monitoring kiln heat in real time and a fuel management system capable of adjusting combustion output to maintain a 50-degree window. Mass production, architectural scale, 2.5 millennia of color stability as the proof. Babylon had industrial ceramic manufacturing capability that the official record cannot explain. And what they chose to carve into stone in a material harder than most modern cutting tools reveals an even more inconvenient truth.
Number 2. Babylon Triple Wall, Nebuchadnezzar Fortification Engineering, Moat, Ancient Defense. Under King Nebuchadnezzar II, Babylon became the most heavily fortified city in the ancient world. The defense system was not a wall, it was 3 concentric walls, a moat, and a mathematics problem solved entirely in fired brick. The outer wall, the Nimiti Enlil, was approximately 7 meters thick and stood at a documented height sufficient to accommodate 2 4-horse chariots riding abreast simultaneously on the top surface. That is a wall wide enough to function as a 2-lane road. Inside it, separated by a defensive corridor, ran the inner wall, the Imgur Enlil, even thicker, reinforced with defensive towers spaced at intervals calculated precisely to eliminate blind spots and ensure overlapping fields of fire at every point along the full perimeter. Between the outer wall and the Euphrates River ran a moat system fed by actively managed hydraulic infrastructure. Not a passive trench, but a controlled water barrier with regulated depth levels maintained through the same canal engineering deployed in the agricultural system. The challenge of building and maintaining 3 concentric defensive walls enclosing a city of several square miles, while simultaneously managing a moat-feeding water supply that couldn't be disrupted by enemy action, flood, or drought, requires infrastructure planning that most modern city engineers would find genuinely demanding. Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, described Babylon's walls as among the greatest achievements of the ancient world. Modern archaeologists mapping the fortification footprint estimate the total brick volume as comparable to the Great Pyramid of Giza, built in a river delta, maintained for centuries, without a single steel beam. But what was buried deepest inside those walls answers the question that opened this entire investigation.
Number 1. Babylon Acoustic Room Clay Vessels Helmholtz Resonator, Ancient Architecture Sound Engineering. After a rainstorm collapsed a section of ground near the city center, a local worker on the excavation team, a man whose grandfather had described this place in hushed terms, quietly led the lead archaeologist to the depression. At the bottom, partially exposed, was the edge of a massive stone slab, sealed in bitumen, deliberately sealed. It took 2 days to move it. Beneath it, a narrow staircase dropped into a small rectangular room carved from solid stone. The walls were angled,
not at right angles, at precisely calculated oblique angles that made zero sense as load-bearing design choices, unless the purpose was never structural. Along the perimeter stood rows of tall clay vessels, open mouths aimed at the center of the floor, geometric, intentional. The expedition's acoustic engineer walked to the center, whispered a single word, and physically flinched. The sound came back from every surface simultaneously, amplified, layered, omnidirectional. Not an echo, a precisely engineered acoustic event. The clay vessels functioned as Helmholtz resonators, their geometry calibrated to redirect and reinforce specific sound frequencies toward the center point. The angled walls eliminated canceling interference. Any voice at the focal point became something that sounded like it originated from everywhere at once. The application was raw civic power. In a city of 200,000 people, institutional authority needs a voice that commands without effort, a judge's verdict, a royal decree, a sentence of death. This room delivered that, through engineered stone and fired clay. Pure physics deployed as political infrastructure. But light was the next invisible force Babylon learned to weaponize without a single source of combustion.
Still curious? Then don't stop now. The next mystery is already waiting for you. Just click the video on screen. I saved it just for you. See you there, curious one.